The Earth usually feels welcoming to us, doesn't it? But there are places where even the presence of humanity is barely tolerated. In those places, humans are not guests at all. If you somehow managed to go there, the moment you stepped in, you would become a stranger, expected to make a mistake. And mistakes are never forgiven in these landscapes. One wrong step, with a single second of carelessness, or even the delay of a single breath, nature could erase you as if you had never been there at all. Now let's explore together these places that look mesmerizing from the outside, but in reality are approached with deep respect, even by the most experienced people. Places where every step is a gamble and every silence is a warning. If you're ready, we're descending into the places where the limits of humanity are drawn. Runit Island. From the outside, it looks like an ordinary tropical island. But the moment you approach the shore, what appears before you is anything but normal. A massive concrete dome. Beneath this dome lies thousands of tons of radioactive waste left behind from the United States nuclear tests during the Cold War. Soil, debris, and the remains of explosions were gathered together and sealed beneath concrete. And here's the real problem. This dome is not a permanent structure. Over time, cracks have begun to form. Sea levels are rising, and salt water is seeping into the concrete. So the waste was never truly destroyed. It was simply covered up. And perhaps the most disturbing truth is this. The dome was never designed as a long-term solution. It was built as a temporary measure. But that temporary solution has been sitting there for decades. Lake Natron. From a distance, this lake looks as if it has been painted with blood. The color of the water sometimes turns deep red, and at other times shifts toward orange, and the sight leaves behind a sense of unease that is difficult to explain. But the real issue is not the color. The water of this lake is so salty and so alkaline that its pH level can sometimes rise above 10. So this is not water as we know it. It is more like a natural chemical solution. Birds, bats, or small animals that enter this water often suffer burns similar to chemical damage, and the bodies of dead animals eventually dry out and harden, and when they wash ashore, they look like statues carved from stone. These bodies, discovered by photographers along the shore, resemble a true gallery of horror, as if nature itself is displaying what it has done here. Naica Crystal Cave. Deep beneath the surface of Mexico, hundreds of meters underground, there is a cave. When you enter it, you feel as if you have stepped into a fairy tale. Crystals stretching several meters in length, clear as glass, as if the Earth's crust itself is glowing from within. But this beauty turns into a nightmare after only a few minutes. Inside, temperatures reach around 45 to 50 degrees Celsius, with humidity levels close to 100%. That means even sweating no longer works. Your body cannot cool itself. Scientists use special suits cooled by ice water just to enter this place, because within minutes, dizziness, loss of consciousness, and eventually fatal heat stroke can begin. These giant crystals formed over hundreds of thousands of years under stable temperature and pressure. The hot underground waters that filled the cave were so rich in calcium sulfate that as the waters slowly cooled, minerals began to crystallize. And growing by only a tiny fraction of a millimeter each year, these giant crystals eventually reached lengths of several meters over time. Shark Alley. Off the coast of South Africa, squeezed between two small land masses, lies a narrow passage whose very name tells you exactly what you are dealing with. This is one of the most active hunting grounds regularly used by great white sharks. Most of the time, the water appears calm and even relatively peaceful. But just a few meters below the surface, enormous shadows move almost invisibly. Because of the ocean currents, this narrow channel functions like a natural highway. Cold, nutrient-rich waters are carried here, and that causes seal colonies to gather in the area. And once the seals gather here, the next link in the chain inevitably arrives as well: great white sharks. Tourists can go cage diving here, but even though the word cage sounds safe, it does not mean these waters can ever truly be controlled. Grand Prismatic Spring. At the very heart of Yellowstone sits this giant spring that looks as though a massive eye has fallen from space. And at first glance, it almost makes you think you could step right into it. Its center is sapphire blue, while the edges are surrounded by rings of orange, yellow, and red. But these colors are not beauty. On the contrary, they are a warning. The water here rises above 70 degrees Celsius. That means for any living thing that falls inside, there is no escape. Within seconds comes shock, followed quickly by death. The microorganisms living here change color depending on the heat. Those mesmerizing rings you see are actually the traces of the only life capable of surviving there. Since the 19th century, almost nothing has remained of most people who fell into this place. No body, not even bones. As if nature quietly erased them. From the outside, this place looks like something from a postcard. But in reality, it is one of nature's calmest-looking, yet most ruthless faces. The Death Road. In Bolivia, there is a road where sitting behind the wheel feels less like driving and more like fighting to stay alive. The Yungas Road begins at an elevation of around 4,500 meters above sea level. Most of the road is a single lane with no guardrails, and beneath it lies a sheer drop of 500 to 600 meters. A rock wall on one side, a cliff on the other. When fog rolls in, you cannot even see a few meters ahead. And when it rains, the road turns to mud. And if you encounter a truck, there may not even be enough space to reverse. In the past, this road claimed hundreds of lives every year. In fact, that is exactly how it earned the name Death Road. Today, alternative routes have reduced the death toll, but the danger has not disappeared completely. Cyclists and thrill seekers still deliberately come here. The Great Blue Hole. Off the coast of Belize, in the middle of turquoise waters, lies an almost perfectly circular void. From above, it looks like a natural wonder, and that is why it attracts divers from all around the world. But the deeper you descend, the more its true nature begins to reveal itself. In the first meters, the light still follows you. Then the blue grows darker. The silence becomes heavier. And as the depth increases, it is no longer the body, but the mind that begins to struggle. After around 30 meters, nitrogen narcosis begins to take effect. Divers describe it as a feeling similar to drunkenness. Thoughts become clouded, reflexes slow down, and people begin to see danger as far smaller than it truly is. And that is exactly where the greatest danger lies. Because in the Great Blue Hole, the real threat is not the water. It is the human mind losing its own perception. Denali. Denali is the highest peak in North America. But what truly makes it terrifying is not its height. It is the weather conditions. As you climb higher, the air becomes thinner. The oxygen you breathe drops to around 60% of what it is at sea level. Every step becomes heavier. Every movement demands more effort. Your body remains in a constant state of alarm, and temperatures can fall to -50 or even -60 degrees Celsius. In this cold, exposed fingers lose all sensation within minutes. After a while, even the pain disappears, because the nerves themselves stop functioning. But the real danger of Denali is that you never know when the weather will change. A day that begins under sunlight can turn into a white hell within hours. Sudden storms trap climbers inside their tents. The winds become so powerful that tents are torn away. People even lose their sense of direction. So not everyone who comes here is strong, but those who survive here truly are. The Danakil Depression. Most people who see this place for the first time say the same thing, that it does not look like Earth at all. During the day, temperatures climb well above 50 degrees Celsius, and shade is almost non-existent. Rain may not fall for months, sometimes even years. The ground is cracked, the air is heavy and scorching. The land beneath is still active. Hot gases carrying the smell of sulfur rise from deep underground and fill the air. Acidic pools glow in neon shades of green, yellow, and orange, and sheets of pure white salt stretch silently across the middle of this chaotic landscape. Everything feels so unreal that for a moment you might think you are walking on another planet. But what makes this place truly unsettling is this: the landscape is not stable. The ground is constantly moving, new cracks are opening, old ground collapses, and gas vents shift from place to place. The Danakil Depression is not just a beautiful landscape. It is actually a section of Earth's crust that is still in the process of forming. Rongbuk Glacier. On the northern face of Everest, this massive river of ice flows silently down from the mountain's slopes, and from a distance, it appears calm and peaceful. But the closer you get, the more that silence feels less like peace and more like a warning. Here, temperatures often fall below -30 degrees Celsius. A sudden blizzard can reduce visibility to zero within seconds, and your sense of direction disappears. But the greatest danger lies beneath your feet. Deep crevasses hidden beneath the snow cannot be seen from the surface, and when you take one wrong step, the ground suddenly vanishes, and a person falls into the void within seconds. Sadly, because of the extreme cold, the bodies of some climbers who disappeared or lost their lives in this region can remain preserved for years. And that turns the Rongbuk area into a silent but brutal reminder for those climbing Everest. Nyiragongo volcano. In the heart of Africa, inside the crater of this volcano, there is a real lava lake boiling so intensely that even at night, darkness can never fully settle. A sea of fire, constantly moving, constantly glowing, almost seeming alive just beneath the surface. And that is why it is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes on Earth. Not because it is constantly on the verge of erupting, but because its lava is extraordinarily fluid. While lava from most volcanoes moves slowly, Nyiragongo's flows almost like water. During the eruption in 2002, lava flows reached the city of Goma within just a few hours. They split neighborhoods apart. Thousands of homes became uninhabitable, and people were given almost no time to escape. Even today, hundreds of thousands of people live on the slopes of this mountain, and the lava lake inside the crater is still there. The Elephant's Foot. Inside Chernobyl, hidden at the end of concrete corridors, there is something waiting. Not a machine or a creature, but something more terrifying than either of them. After the nuclear disaster of 1986, melted reactor fuel mixed with concrete and metal to form this strange, blackened mass. Its shape truly resembles the foot of an elephant, but its presence is as disturbing as its appearance. When it was first discovered, The radiation it emitted was so intense that people who looked at it for only a few minutes suffered severe radiation sickness. Although the levels have decreased today, approaching it without special equipment is still impossible. The Mariana Trench. It begins at a depth of approximately 11,000 meters beneath the ocean. If you could descend there, the mass of water above you would apply pressure equal to the weight of a car on every square centimeter of your body. In such an environment, the human body would be crushed within seconds. Even specially engineered metals can barely withstand such pressure. Since sunlight cannot reach these depths, it exists in absolute darkness. For many years, it was believed that this place was completely lifeless. But when modern cameras descended there for the first time, we discovered creatures that had adapted to the abyss. Fish with transparent bodies, organisms that produce their own light, strange beings whose bones are soft and whose bodies reshape themselves under pressure. Yes, life may be far more resilient than we imagined, but even so, this place remains an absolute end for us. Snake Island. Its official name is Isla da Queimada Grande. Civilians are completely forbidden from setting foot here, and the reason is very clear. This island is the natural habitat of the golden lancehead viper, an extremely venomous species found nowhere else on Earth. The island is filled with an unbelievable number of snakes. They remain silent and motionless on tree branches, between rocks and across the ground, until it is already too late. The venom of this species is far more powerful than that of other vipers. If left untreated, a bite can cause internal bleeding, tissue destruction, and life-threatening complications. That is why no one except the Brazilian Navy is permitted to enter the island. In fact, the reason these snakes became so deadly is their isolation from the rest of the world. For thousands of years, they lived on this island without contact with any other species. To hunt prey and survive, their venom gradually evolved to become more and more potent. In other words, the deadliness here is not a coincidence. It is a kind of survival cost imposed by this island upon its snakes.